Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Carry On with Carrie Fitz. I'm Carrie Fitz, owner-broker of Carrie Fitz Real Estate in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and today I have Tricia Stone. She is an agent in our office. Tricia, talk a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I have lived in Tuscaloosa for the last 20 years in this iteration. I've also lived here before and also went to the University of Alabama. So I love calling Tuscaloosa home for a variety of reasons, but one of the things too that I'd like to compliment Carrie on is the involvement that she has in this community, because if we're going to sell Tuscaloosa, or if we're going to sell a home in Tuscaloosa, then we need to make sure that we're selling Tuscaloosa as well. And being involved in this community, it's a large community but small enough to really have an impact if you're going to want to get involved, and that's something that Carrie does in a variety of ways, making sure that this place is a good place to call home.
That's right, and I know that Tricia lives downtown. Our office is downtown. We both love downtown and love Tuscaloosa. It's an easy place to be. So I know that I'm happy to be here, and I've lived a lot of places, and I do call Tuscaloosa home now, and have for the last 35 years, I think. But today what we're going to talk about is buyers. I've got a short list of questions, typical questions that buyers ask when we start working with them. And so I want Tricia to give me her input for answers in working with buyer clients. So one of the questions that we get asked all the time is, do I need a home inspection? Does a buyer need a home inspection?
Yes, if you are new to Alabama, Alabama is a caveat emptor state, otherwise buyer beware. There are some obligations that the seller is required to let you know about if there's latent defects with the house. But otherwise, a home inspector is going to show you things that you can go back and question either through a repair agreement, renegotiating the price, or walking away from the contract if you're not comfortable with what you're getting for the price you're paying for it.
That's exactly right. In a home inspection, you know, they're going to go in and they're not specific to anything. Home inspectors are typically not electricians or plumbers or anything like that, but they do a good job of checking things. And what you might find on a home inspection is they're not really sure if the HVAC is, they just know it's older, or they might hear a noise in something. So they're going to put on your home inspection report that could be anywhere from 40 to 100 pages long, that, you know, to have it checked by an HVAC professional or a plumber or a licensed electrician, so that you might want to have those inspections after you get your home inspection, just to be careful, just to be sure. Do your due diligence. The other thing that we get asked, or another thing that we get asked all the time, is about utilities, utility history. So why would somebody ask about that?
Well, the operation of your house is going to also impact your monthly payment as well as the mortgage. So there's things that I always, when I'm listing a property, provide, or if I'm representing a buyer, expect to be given from the other agent. And that is a utility history. So I understand how energy efficient the house is. What can I expect to be paying? You know, you're talking about HVAC. Is the whole house running on one unit or two units? What's the mechanical? So if I'm not using part of the house, I can shut it down. I also ask about HOAs. That's very important, because even in some communities, condominiums, obviously you see HOA when you drive in, but there's planned communities that have some HOAs that cover landscaping or other features of the HOA. So make sure that you know what that monthly payment is, and also get a copy of the covenants and restrictions, because you don't want to get into something after you've gone ahead, you've bought the house, you've got your mortgage payment, and then find out, oh, the air conditioning bill is $500 a month in the summer, and oh, there's a $250 payment that I've got to make to this HOA. That's money, it adds up.
Right. So basically, with the utility history, you're finding out, what is it going to cost me to live here?
Correct.
Month after month. Perfect. We hear about this. It's reiterated over and over and over again with agents. Does somebody need to be pre-approved, and why?
So this is big in that if I'm going to make an offer, and especially if there's other offers that are being made on the same property, I've got to show that the client I'm bringing can't afford this property. We are not wasting your time. We are sitting on G, waiting on O. Sign this deal, and we're going to get started with our financing, if it's financing, or cash, if we've made a cash offer.
So also, just to add to that, a pre-approval is really a shallow search. All it really tells us is that you have spoken to a lender, and that based on, without being under contract, based on a real shallow search, that you can buy this house for this much money. Once you're under contract, they do a deeper dive, and that's when they're going to check
Credit scores. They're going to pull a hard credit score. They're going to look at
debt to income and all of those kinds of things, outstanding things, maybe a hospital bill or a student loan that you didn't know that was there, or things like that. And that's when it really gets kind of down and dirty. So to a pre-approval, very shallow search. It does not mean that they're guaranteed to get a loan. All it means is that somebody has looked, and based on a real shallow search, it appears that they are good to go for that amount of money. You really won't know if they can get financing until you're under contract and they do that deeper dive. So, talking about loans, what does it look like what is it going to cost the buyer to close?
Well, that can fluctuate because the offer could ask for the seller to pay part of the closing cost. One of the things that I always do is first start out with the buyer and ask them, okay, how much cash do you have right now for the down payment and other costs that are going to be associated with closing? We have to give a good faith estimate and break down what those costs are. If at the end of that it looks like you need more cash, you can ask the buyer to take some of that and put it into, they pay for the closing cost. Or you can roll it into your financing through the sale price of the house. So it's kind of a backwards or reverse way of looking at, I've got this money, how much of that am I going to put to the down payment? How much of that do I need to close? Where does that end me up with? If that's a negative number, then we need to go back and figure out, do we ask for a lower selling price? Do we ask for the seller to pay some of the cost for the closing? Do we ask for a higher selling price and we're just going to finance that amount that we can't come up with in the part of the loan? One of the things I do want to mention here is, one thing I do with clients is look at the commission. So typically, the buyer's agent is going to get their commission paid by the seller. Like the seller is saying, thank you for bringing me this buyer, I'm going to pay you this amount of money. You've heard a lot lately about the lawsuit where buyers were not aware that really they were paying the buyer's agent through the sale price of the home. So robbing Peter to pay Paul, you could say. One of the things I like to do is break out, okay, if you were to pay me outside the contract, what does that look like, and how can we reduce the sale price of the house by telling the seller, you're not expected to pay any commission, you're paying that on separately outside the contract, and that way it could lower your monthly payment. I've seen it fluctuate from over time $2,000 to less than that, but hey, $2,000 is a nice refrigerator.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you mentioned the NAR lawsuit that brought us to this place. Agents in this office, we've always done buyer agency. We've always explained that to our buyers. But now, because of the lawsuit, I think everybody needs to be very clear and do a better job of explaining that type of thing. Really, not that much has changed for us because we were always kind of rolling that way anyway. But it is definitely on everybody's radar, and I think that's a good thing.
It's just about transparency.
Right.
And if you're buying something, you want to know, I'm bringing the money to the table. So how does this money to the table I'm bringing break out among all the parties? The bank, the seller, the seller's agent, the buyer's agent. And as you've always told us, Carrie, it's negotiable. Commission is negotiable. So if you're a buyer, talk to your agent about, hey, how much is the commission being split apart, especially if the agent is representing both sides of the deal. Make sure you're comfortable with it.
Very good. So another question that we get asked all the time is additions, upgrades, improvements. Why do we as agents ask sellers agents those types of questions on behalf of a buyer?
So kind of the process I go through if I'm representing a buyer is I look and see the history of that house. What has it sold for? I go in through the MLS or Zillow and look at old pictures and try to see, okay, this is what it sold for the last 2 or 3 times to where we are now. How much has it improved? How much has the neighborhood improved? And then what am I seeing in the house that's improved? Did they add a bathroom? Did they add a pool? Have they added square footage? Have they changed out finishes? Those are things that if I'm a seller, I want to get some return on my investment for doing that. What that is can differ based on what they did, but you want to understand if they bought the house at this price and now they're asking this price and it's a lot more, and they haven't had the house for long, give me a list of what you did. And if it's nothing, then you're just flipping the house on the buyer's back. So negotiate that price down.
That's right. And so talking about price, talk a little bit about comps. What is it and why? How do we use it?
So you're going to compare the house that you are looking at with other houses in that range that have sold in the last 6 months. Sometimes I have to drag it out to a year because supply's been really tight. I look at the neighborhood, the subdivision, the square footage, the bedrooms, bathrooms, that configuration to understand how this house compares. Now, it's not always apples to apples. It might be apples to oranges, which you try not to be, but it might be Macintosh to delicious. So you kind of have to go in and adjust. If there is an additional bathroom, give them credit for that. But if there's not, take it away if there's against the comp. It is helpful if there's a subdivision and you can look within that subdivision or within that census block that's around that subdivision. One of the other things that we like to do for our buyers is to give them a profile of the neighborhood, basically using the ESRI data that's available that says what the average income is, what the average mortgage payment is in that neighborhood, average age, very helpful for someone who's not familiar with Tuscaloosa. But it lets you understand, okay, comparable to the other houses in the neighborhood or houses nearby that are like it, what is their square footage to what you're asking for me? We also account for market increase. Tuscaloosa, unlike other cities, has shown an increase even as interest rates have increased. Tuscaloosa's market has improved year to year. Not as robust as it was a few years ago, but it's still in the positive. So how do you account for that? I also like, if I'm representing a buyer, when I present the offer to the seller's agent, to show them how we got to the price. Here were the comps we used. Here's the improvement in the market that we used. Here's the improvement we gave for any additions or upgrades that you've told us about, a new roof, so forth. And this is how we get to this bottom price. And that way they can go back to their seller and it doesn't look like I just threw spaghetti against the wall and came up with the price.
That's right. And I really do think that that's a very important skill to have as a buyer's agent, is to be able to run comps and to know how to do it effectively. And that's something that we teach all the time in this office, because I do feel like it's such an important skill, and Tricia's excellent at it. She's a data girl, and
I love Excel.
She loves it. So she does a very good job with that. So just in general, as a consumer, what does a buyer's agent do? Why do I need one? And what should I look for in a buyer's agent?
Well, a buyer's agent is going to be doing, like I say, a lot of the Nancy Drew work for you. They're going to be looking at these comps. They should have a local knowledge of the neighborhood and the community and be able to tell you what's going on in that neighborhood, what's going on in the community, what forces are going to be impacting whether the market's up or down, or why you're paying more for one zip code over the other. Why is that price per square foot more? So they should have that. They also should help you in understanding the history of the house with the access they have to all of the data. They should do all of your negotiating, figuring out where there's going to be issues with improvements that the house may need, the inspection, helping you kind of go through that and see, is this something that you need to go back and renegotiate about? And then what a buyer's agent should do, and especially if you're somebody that's moving into a community from outside of Tuscaloosa, which we have a lot of people like that, is give you information about what's going on in the community. Because our goal is not to help you just find a home. We want to help you find a place. And so that means, what are your interests? How do I get involved? Are there special things I need to know? Carrie mentioned that I sell a lot in the downtown area. The downtown area is protected in spots by the Tuscaloosa Historic Preservation Commission. What does that mean in terms of a buyer once I get into this house? What can I do? What is the zoning impact going to do? There's a lot of things that the buyer should know about, and just to take a little slap at some of these services where first person that picks up a phone call is the one that's going to be able to help with the buyer. You don't know who that person is. They may have been in this community for 1 week. So I think the most important thing a buyer's agent can do is tell you about the communities, its pluses, its threats, its opportunities, explain its jurisdictions, its zoning, all of these things that are going to make you a more prepared homeowner in Tuscaloosa.
That's great, and I do think that education is very important. And we teach a lot in this office. However, there is nothing like living in the community that will help a buyer be able to get plugged in to whatever community, and there are differences in places that you live in Tuscaloosa. Downtown living is very different from living up on the lake, or living in the country, or living in a platted subdivision, which we have a ton in Tuscaloosa County. It's a different lifestyle, so getting to know your buyer and already having a community-based knowledge, a buyer's agent that has a community-based experience and knowledge puts you so far ahead in terms of finding your place in Tuscaloosa. You can't learn that. You have to be that for an extended period of time.
I totally agree. I think that you have to be able to say, this is what this community has to offer for you. This is how this community works. Answer all of those questions. Our goal is to make sure that you're not just happy with your house, but you're happy with Tuscaloosa, so that you stay, that you encourage others to come. And to your point, we have a lot of people that buy houses in Tuscaloosa, but they don't live in Tuscaloosa. They use them for game day. But what do they want that what do they want that's different than someone who's moving to Tuscaloosa and has young children and needs to know more about school systems? So we kind of are ambassadors for Tuscaloosa when you think about it, and we really have the responsibility to know everything from recreation to civic engagement to legislative action as to what's going on that's going to impact this buyer's life in this community.
And what's coming, because Tuscaloosa is constantly growing and in very positive ways, and different industry looking at Tuscaloosa. And so that's important too, you know, in terms of we get more buyers because we've got these people that are coming here with whatever industry might be due to Tuscaloosa. But, you know, they have typically very specific ideas about what they want. If you want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch, anybody can find you that. It's not, but that's not, that's just a house. That's not a lifestyle, that's not being plugged in, and that's not, you know, how you're gonna live. So you really do yourself a disservice by not getting that kind of help.
I agree.
Well, that's it for another episode of Carry On with Carrie Fitz. I appreciate Tricia Stone
Thank
being
you.
here. She's an excellent agent in our office, and I appreciate all her efforts here. She always goes above and beyond for her clients. You can always talk to anybody that's worked for her or with her, and they just rave. She has raving fans.
I let people stay at my house.
That's true. That's true. But anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye. That was fun.